The fronts are blazing from Crimea to the Caspian Sea all the way to the heart of Donbass, which is witnessing an unprecedented acceleration toward collapse. Are we standing on the brink of a radical shift that could change the face of the conflict? Ukraine's battle for survival is entering its decisive stages as reports pour in about massive U.S. pressure on Kyiv to make painful concessions. Will Zelensky agree to sell land in exchange for peace? And can Europe pull itself together in the face of an American strategy that views the old continent as functionally dysfunctional? Dangerous details and shocking surprises. Stay with us to the end to get the full picture. The intensifying confrontation, fire from the skies, and escalation across the fronts. Let's start at the heart of the non-stop military escalation. Ukraine, in a clear act of defiance, has continued its heavy aerial operations, striking deep inside Russian territory and targeting vital sites. We have all seen the shocking footage of a Russian Antonov 26 aircraft being hit on the runway of a Crimean airport, specifically at the Kacha Air Base, one of the main hubs from which Russian drones are launched. According to reports, the strike was carried out by a Ukrainian drone equipped with an electro-optical reconnaissance camera of the FP2 type, once again confirming that Russian forces still insist on failing to provide hardened shelters or hangars to protect their aircraft after 4 years of fighting. This negligence has become a deadly vulnerability. The operations did not stop at Crimea. Ukrainian attacks extended deep into Russia itself as Kyiv launched 3 consecutive waves of suicide drones. Although the Russian side announced that its air defenses intercepted 123 kamikaze drones, the success rate was not 100% as usual. The result? Confirmed strikes on vital oil refineries, such as the Yaroslav refinery, dealing a blow to the backbone of the Russian economy. But the biggest surprise came from the Caspian Sea. Shocking Ukrainian reports confirmed that 2 Russian vessels were hit in this usually calm body of water. Kyiv claims these ships were transporting military equipment between Russia and Iran and were subject to Western sanctions. In contrast, the Russian side issued a brief statement announcing the interception of 2 Ukrainian drones over the Caspian Sea, without addressing the fate of the vessels. If the Ukrainian details are confirmed, this would represent a dangerous qualitative escalation, expanding the geography of the confrontation in an unprecedented way. Ukraine did not overlook Crimea either, continuing its aerial operations targeting Russian radar systems there, and confirming that 2 were hit. The repeated targeting of Russian radars in Crimea clearly indicates a growing gap in Russia's early warning capabilities, one that Kyiv may exploit to launch even bolder and deeper attacks. The Russian response: Odessa under fire and Donbass under pressure. The Russian response was swift, violent, and intense. As we speak, reports continue to emerge of Russian drone and missile operations unusually concentrated on Odessa and its vital ports. This focus is no coincidence. Odessa is the launch point of Ukrainian drones heading toward Crimea, and it is also the gateway for Western weapons and supply shipments. The Russians struck a cargo ship with an Iskander-M ballistic missile, causing severe damage. It appears that Moscow received precise intelligence indicating the arrival of Western supply shipments, some of which had been unloaded at Odessa's ports, especially after Ukraine's massive operation yesterday, during which Kyiv launched more than 400 drones, followed by another 120 today. Russian operations were not limited to Odessa. Correspondents from Avia Pro and Russian Spring reported intensive Russian activity, possibly even heavier than in Odessa, in the Pavlograd area of Dnipropetrovsk, only to now face new fronts being opened by Moscow. Accelerating collapse in Donbass. 0-hour approaches. In western Donbass, the situation is evolving at a dizzying pace. After the rapid capture of Severesk, Russian forces surged forward at lightning speed and entered the Sloviansk axis. The 2 most heavily fortified cities in western Donbass, Sloviansk and Kramatorsk, are now in the spotlight, with 0-hour fast approaching. On the map, you can see the astonishing speed of Russia's advance towards Sloviansk in just a single day. This advance comes at a time when the Ukrainian side has not yet fully absorbed the fall of Severesk and continues to deny Russian control over it, publishing outdated maps dating back 6 months. But the response comes from within Ukraine itself, as geolocation specialists document on the map the appearance of Russian forces west of the city and beyond. The Russians did not stop there. They entered Svyatogorsk and Pokrovsk, advancing 31.5 square kilometers according to Russian Spring correspondence. It appears that Russian forces are exploiting confusion within Ukrainian ranks along the Severesk axis to push rapidly into Sloviansk at maximum speed, securing advanced positions before Ukrainian forces can reorganize. As for Kramatorsk, it is preparing for the decisive phase. A belt of fortifications and defensive lines stretching dozens of kilometers deep has been established in anticipation of the fighting moving into the city. Residents have begun evacuation operations. Footage published by local sources from the highway leading to Kramatorsk shows anti-drone nets, defensive mines, and anti-tank and anti-personnel fortifications extending 14 kilometers deep. This reveals the extent of the rapid Russian advance in western Donbass, which could enable them, before any negotiations conclude, to seize full control of what remains of the region. In Zaporizhia, Russian forces regained their momentum after a period of stagnation caused by Ukrainian artillery. They targeted artillery battery positions and then returned using the same operational method, small groups spreading quietly without engaging in direct clashes until they could encircle key sites. They seized farms in the northeast of the city, and Russian Spring correspondents announced that a group had advanced into urban areas in the city center south of the Yenshur River, bringing total gains over the past 24 hours to 2 square kilometers. American and European pressure. Zelensky in the line of fire. On the political and diplomatic front, attention is turning to peace negotiations being strongly pushed by US President Trump. Trump, who appears to have grown bored with the stalemate, has criticized Zelensky's position more than once, saying that everyone in Ukraine liked the peace plan except Zelensky, even though he promised security guarantees for Ukraine and invited them to a special meeting with Europe on December 13th. He has expressed disappointment with both sides. The White House press secretary confirmed that Trump is frustrated with fruitless meetings and wants more action rather than talk, stressing that he will continue speaking with both sides and, if an opportunity arises, he may send his envoy to negotiations, but currently sees no such opportunity. This appears to be a pressure tactic aimed at Ukraine and the Europeans. Trump confirmed that his peace plan for Ukraine includes territorial sharing and US participation in security guarantees, likening it to a very complex real estate deal multiplied by 1,000, warning that if the war does not stop, it could escalate into World War III. Zelensky, for his part, has long maintained a firm position on Donbass, rejecting any territorial concessions. However, now he is considering holding a public referendum to ask citizens whether they would accept territorial concessions in Donbass in exchange for peace. Here, Zelensky appears to be shifting responsibility for any concessions onto public opinion, knowing that any personal concession would mean the end of his political career after 4 years of war. However, it is clear that this tactic may not be acceptable to either Russia or the United States. Here comes the shocking news. The Wall Street Journal revealed that Trump demanded European leaders, Britain, France, and Germany, pressure Zelensky to accept the peace plan. He reportedly told them in a phone call that Zelensky must accept major territorial concessions and restrictions on the army. He criticized Zelensky, accusing him of not reading the plan and being unwilling to reconsider its terms, according to WSJ sources. Adding further complexity, Le Monde reported that Ukraine had agreed to a peace formula and a buffer zone in Donbass, with both sides pulling back from the current line of contact. The paper quoted Frederick Scheimer as saying that Ukraine had become ready to accept territorial concessions, and the withdrawal of Ukrainian forces from Donbass is included in the amendments Zelensky submitted to Trump. This report starkly contradicts Zelensky's public denials and suggests that discussions may be happening behind the scenes, with the referendum serving as political cover. The American-European rift, the old continent searches for its identity. Away from the battlefields, the gap between the United States and Europe is widening in an unprecedented way, especially after the release of the new U.S. national security strategy. The section on relations with Europe was like a ticking time bomb, describing the old continent as functionally dysfunctional and in total decline. Germany's Der Spiegel, in a fiery report, featured an image of Putin dividing a map of Europe with his hand, titled "One Goal," interpreting Putin's rhetoric as oscillating between pity, contempt, and hostility toward Europe. The report criticized the new U.S. strategy, which Europeans see as an effort to foster opposition movements and change political systems in Europe, echoing remarks by U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Most striking was the article's conclusion that Europe is indeed incapable of even responding to ridicule if it does not rely on itself for defense, that it will survive only if it confronts Russia and becomes more independent from the United States, and that Ukraine cannot defeat Russia, and that Trump is right about this. This marks a historic shift in European thinking. Criticism was not limited to media reports. European officials have begun openly criticizing the new strategy. Politico quoted Ursula von der Leyen urging Trump not to interfere in European democracy, stressing that the EU does not intervene in the selection of national leaders, that this is the prerogative of citizens and the sovereignty of voters, and it must be protected. On the issue of frozen Russian assets, a sudden reversal occurred. After Britain had strongly pushed for their seizure, the Financial Times today revealed that London has refused to confiscate Russian assets in the UK, estimated at $11.6 billion. The British government declined to provide guarantees to British banks against potential legal action by Russia. Moreover, Russia has threatened to seize European assets frozen on its territory worth over $300 billion in retaliation for any move against its assets in Europe. France has also refused to confiscate Russian assets. This European retreat reflects deep concern over legal and economic consequences and may signal that Europe is beginning to grasp the high cost of total confrontation. Do you think this military escalation and political pressure will push the parties toward an imminent agreement, or are we heading for an even greater escalation that could reshape the entire conflict map? Share your views.